He hadn't spoken a single word in 3 years. His silence was louder than a cannon blast, terrifying his enemies and confusing his tribe. But no one knew why the Apache chief kept his mouth shut, until the day a captured white woman fell to her knees, looked him in the eye, and whispered a secret that made the Stone Chief finally scream. Welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving deep into the dusty archives of the Arizona Territory. Back to 1879, this is the harrowing, heartbreaking, and ultimately shocking true-life saga of Clara Duncannon and the silent Apache warrior known only as Talahassan. It's a story of captivity, survival, and a twist so personal it was buried in history for over a century. If you love stories about the untamed West and the secrets it holds, you are in the right place. The heat in the Arizona Territory didn't just burn, it judged. On August 14, 1876, Clara Duncannon was judging it right back. She was 24 years old, with hands calloused from wrangling stubborn cattle and a heart hardened by 2 miscarriages. She was scrubbing laundry in a tin tub outside her homestead near the San Pedro River when the silence of the afternoon was shattered not by a scream, but by the thundering of hooves. She didn't have time to run for the Winchester rifle leaning against the porch. By the time she stood up, wiping the suds from her forearms, the dust cloud had already parted to reveal them. There were 6 of them. Chiricahua Apache. They didn't yell. They didn't whoop. They rode with a terrifying, disciplined efficiency. Clara saw her husband, Elias, run from the barn with a pitchfork, a foolish, brave, desperate weapon against 6 repeating rifles. The gunshot that took him down was quick. He didn't suffer, and for that, Clara would later thank God, though at that moment she felt her entire world fracture into jagged glass. She didn't scream. That was the first thing that surprised the riders. Clara stood her ground, her wet hands balling into fists, her green eyes blazing with a hatred so pure it could have started a brush fire. One warrior, a man with a scar running through his left eyebrow, raised his club to strike her, to finish it. Stop. It wasn't a word spoken. It was a gesture. The leader of the raiding party sat atop a paint horse that looked as wild as the landscape. He was massive, his chest painted with the distinct yellow and black markings of a war leader. He wore a single eagle feather, but it was his face that froze Clara's blood. It was a mask of absolute, impenetrable stone. He raised one hand. The warrior with the club lowered his weapon immediately. The leader rode his horse up to Clara, towering over her. He looked at Elias's body, then back at Clara. He didn't smile, he didn't gloat. He pointed a finger at her, then pointed to the south. He made a slashing motion across his throat, then pointed to the south again. The message was clear: come or die. This was Talahassan. At the time, the U.S. cavalry had a bounty of 500 bushels on his head, listed under the name the Silent Wolf. The Army Scouts, specifically a man named Al Seba, a real scout active in the area, had noted in his journals that Talahassan was unique among the Apache leaders. He did not negotiate. He did not parley. And for the last 3 years, according to every scout and captive, he had not spoken a single word. Not a command, not a prayer, not a war cry. He communicated entirely through hand signs and whistles. Clara was thrown onto the back of a spare pony. Her hands were bound with rawhide. As they rode away, leaving her burning home behind, she didn't look back. She looked at the broad, scarred back of the Silent Wolf. She made a vow then, a private promise whispered to the wind. I will live long enough to hear you beg for mercy. The journey to the stronghold in the Dragoon Mountains took 3 brutal days. Clara was given water, but no kindness. When they arrived at the encampment, tucked high in a canyon fortress of red rocks, she expected torture. She expected death. Instead, she was cut down from the horse and shoved toward a group of elderly women. She was to be a slave, a worker. The first year was a blur of exhaustion. Clara, whom the tribe came to call Isinantan, which she later learned meant something close to medicine woman, because she knew how to set broken bones, learned the rhythm of the camp. She learned to grind corn until her shoulders screamed. She learned to tan hides until her fingers bled. But mostly, she watched Talahassin. He was an enigma. He was the provider for the camp, the fiercest warrior, yet he lived in isolation. He had no wife. No children laughed around his fire. He sat alone outside his wickiup, a brush hut, whittling wood or sharpening his knife. Clara noticed something strange in the winter of 1877. A young boy, maybe 6 years old, named Choddy, had tripped and fallen into a patch of cactus. He was screaming, the needles buried deep in his cheek. The mother was frantic. Clara rushed over, her instincts taking over. She grabbed a pair of iron tweezers she had managed to keep hidden in her skirt hem since her capture. She held the boy down, speaking softly in English. "Hush now, little one. Shh. I've got you." As she pulled the needles, she felt a shadow fall over her. She looked up. Talahassin was standing there. He wasn't looking at the boy. He was staring at Clara. His eyes were wide, his chest heaving, as if he had run a mile. He was staring at her mouth. He reached out a hand, trembling, as if to touch her face. The tribe fell silent. The silent chief never touched the captives. Then he squeezed his eyes shut, a look of agonizing pain crossing his features. He dropped his hand, turned on his heel, and walked into the darkness of the canyon. That night, Clara lay on her buffalo robe, unable to sleep. She realized 2 things. First, Talahassin wasn't silent because he was mute. He was silent because he was holding something in. And second, the way he looked at her wasn't with hatred. It was with recognition. By the second year, 1878, Clara Duncannon had ceased to be the terrified white woman from the homestead. She was tanned, lean, and wore buckskins. She spoke a broken but functional dialect of Apache. She had become essential to the tribe, particularly for her healing skills. But the mystery of Talahassin consumed her. The U.S. cavalry was closing in. General George Crook's forces were tightening the noose around the Dragoon Mountains. The tension in the camp was palpable. Food was scarce. One sweltering July afternoon, the men were out hunting. The camp was quiet. Clara was tasked with bringing fresh water to the chief's wickiup. It was strictly forbidden to enter his personal dwelling when he wasn't there, but the water skin inside had leaked, and the elders ordered her to replace it. Clara pushed aside the heavy flap of the wickiup. Inside, it smelled of sage, sweet grass, and old leather. It was sparse. A sleeping roll, a pile of weaponry, and a small wooden chest in the corner. The chest looked out of place. It was made of oak, with brass hinges, white man's work. It looked like something you'd find in a Boston parlor, not an Apache stronghold. Curiosity, dangerous and seductive, pulled Clara toward it. She knew if she were caught, she could be killed. Talahassin was known to be ruthless with those who touched his possessions. She knelt. The latch was broken. She lifted the lid. Inside, there were no scalps, no trophies of war. There was a folded American flag with 40 stars. There was a pair of small woolen socks, infant-sized. And there was a book. Clara's hands shook as she picked it up. It was a Bible, a standard King James Bible. She opened the cover. The inscription on the inside was faded, written in elegant, looping cursive. To my beloved Thomas, may the Lord keep you until you return to us. 1869. Thomas? Who was Thomas? Beneath the Bible lay a silver locket. It was tarnished black with age. Clara pried it open with her thumbnail. The breath left her lungs in a sharp hiss. On the left side was a tintype photograph of a young man. He was clean-shaven, wearing a Union Army uniform, smiling broadly. But the eyes, those dark, intense eyes, were undeniable. It was Talahassan, younger, happier, and wearing the uniform of the people hunting him. But it was him. On the right side of the locket was a picture of a woman. She had pale skin, dark hair pulled back in a bun, and a high lace collar. Clara dropped the locket. The clatter against the wooden chest sounded like a gunshot in the quiet tent. The woman in the photo wasn't just a stranger. She looked exactly like Clara. The same nose, the same jawline, the same wide-set eyes. It could have been Clara's sister. "What are you doing?" The voice was rusty, jagged, like stones grinding together. It was a voice that hadn't been used in years. Clara froze. She turned slowly. Talahassan stood at the entrance of the wickiup. He wasn't making hand signs. He wasn't whistling. He had spoken, in English. He held a repeating rifle, but it was lowered. His face, usually a mask of stone, was cracked open with a mixture of rage and terrified vulnerability. I was bringing water," Clara stammered, switching to English, her heart hammering against her ribs. Talahassan stepped inside, the flap closing behind him, plunging them into semi-darkness. He didn't look at the water. He looked at the open chest. He looked at the locket on the floor. He walked past her, his movement fluid and deadly, and picked up the locket. He snapped it shut with a violence that made Clara flinch. "You should not see this," he rasped. His English was perfect, devoid of the accent most Apache warriors had when mimicking soldiers. It was the English of an educated man. "You speak," Clara whispered, finding her courage. You're Thomas." He turned on her, his eyes blazing. "Thomas is dead. He died at Sand Creek. He died when the world burned." He grabbed her arm. His grip was like iron, but he didn't twist. He pulled her close, staring at her face, searching it just like he had the day he captured her. "Why?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why haven't you spoken? Why do you have this?" "Because," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper that sounded like a scream, suppressed for a decade. "Speaking brings the ghosts. And you look just like her." "Who?" Clara demanded. "Who do I look like?" "My wife," Talahassan said. "My white wife." Clara's mind reeled. An Apache chief with a white wife? A Union soldier turned renegade? "Where is she?" Clara asked softly. Talahassan released her arm, stepping back as if he had been burned. He turned away, his shoulders hunching. "They killed her. The blue coats. My own men. They didn't know she was my wife. They just saw an Apache with a white woman and—" He couldn't finish the sentence. He turned back to Clara, his eyes wet. "For 3 years, I promised the spirits I would never speak the language of the men who killed her. I became the wolf. I buried Thomas." "But you captured me," Clara said, the pieces clicking together. "You didn't kill me. You spared me." "Because when I saw you at the homestead," Talahassan said, "I thought the spirits had sent her back. I thought you were Mary." The revelation hung in the air, thick and heavy. He hadn't enslaved her out of cruelty. He had kept her because he couldn't bear to let her go, yet he couldn't bear to speak to her because she was a living reminder of his failure. Suddenly, a shout erupted from outside. Gunfire cracked through the valley. "Cavalry!" a warrior screamed in Apache. Talahassan's face instantly hardened. The grief vanished. replaced by the Stone Chief. He grabbed his rifle. "Stay here," he commanded Clara. "If they find you, tell them you are a captive. Tell them I treated you badly. They will treat you better if they think you are a victim." "Wait!" Clara grabbed his wrist. "Thomas! Talahassin!" he corrected sharply. "Thomas is dead." He ran out into the sunlight to fight the men he used to serve. Clara stood alone in the wickiup, the sounds of battle erupting around her, but her mind was stuck on the locket. She looked at the chest again. There was a piece of paper tucked under the lining she hadn't noticed before. She pulled it out. It was a letter. "Dearest brother, if you receive this, know that I have taken Mary and the child west. We are going to find you. I know you are living with the tribes now. I don't care. You are my blood." See. Clara froze. The handwriting, the loop of the L, the sharp cross of the T. It was her mother's handwriting. Clara's mother, Catherine, had a brother who vanished after the Civil War. A brother named Thomas. Clara gasped, covering her mouth. The woman in the locket wasn't just a stranger who looked like her. Mary was her aunt by marriage, and Talahassin, the feared Apache chief, the man who had killed her husband, he was her uncle. He was family. And he didn't know. The gunfire grew louder. They were losing. Clara grabbed a knife from the pile of weapons. She wasn't going to wait to be rescued. She had to save him. She had to tell him. She ran out into the chaos of the battle. The air was thick with smoke. Bodies lay on the ground. She saw Talahassin on the ridge, fighting 3 soldiers with nothing but a tomahawk. He was cornered. Clara didn't run away from the Apache. She ran towards them. She ran toward the monster who was her blood. "Thomas!" she screamed, her voice cutting through the din of battle. "Uncle Thomas!" The scream froze him. It froze the soldiers. But it was what happened next that would change history. The name Uncle Thomas shattered the chief's defenses. On the ridge, Talahassin hesitated, staring at Clara with dawning recognition. That split second of humanity cost him his freedom. A rifle butt cracked against his skull, and the silent wolf fell. Soldiers swarmed him, binding him with heavy iron chains. Clara tried to shield his body, screaming, "Don't hurt him! He is my family!" But the soldiers dismissed her desperation as madness, Stockholm Syndrome born of trauma. They hauled them to Fort Bowie. Major Evans, a man blinded by war, wasted no time. "He is a savage who killed 20 of my men," Evans declared, ignoring Clara's pleas. "He hangs on Friday." Clara was placed in the officers' quarters, treated like fragile glass, but her spirit was iron. She knew the truth. He wasn't a monster. He was Thomas Miller, a broken veteran, and she wasn't going to let him die. Under the cover of a moonless night, Clara stole a trooper's uniform from a laundry line. Tucking her hair under a slouch hat, she slipped through the shadows to the stockade. The young guard on duty never saw her coming. With a heavy heart and a heavier rock, she knocked him out and snatched the keys. Inside the damp cell, Talahassin looked up. "Clara," he rasped, his voice rough with disuse. She unlocked his chains. "We have to go, Uncle Thomas." He hesitated, rubbing his raw wrists. "I am a dead man, Clara. Leave me. You are safe here." "I am not leaving family," she hissed, grabbing his hand. "My mother, your sister Catherine, never stopped looking for you. She knew you weren't a traitor. She knew you were just hurting." The mention of his sister broke him. The stone mask finally crumbled, and Thomas Miller wept. She looked for me." "Every day," Clara whispered. "Now move." They didn't run as captor and captive, but as kin. They scrambled over the wooden palisade just as the alarm bells began to ring, disappearing into the ink-black desert, united by blood and a desperate bid for freedom. They found refuge in a shallow cave in the Pedregosa Mountains. In the quiet dark, the silence was truly broken. Thomas revealed the ghosts that haunted him, the horrors of the Civil War that shattered his mind, and the Apache tribe that accepted his silence when his own people would not. "I didn't kill your husband, Clara," he confessed softly. "My warriors struck before I arrived. I took you because I couldn't leave my own blood to die in the sand." But their time was borrowed. The legendary scout Al-Siba tracked them down within days. Surrounded by rifles, Major Evans's voice boomed from the rocks below. "Send the girl out, Talahassan, and we'll make it quick." Thomas looked at Clara with a sad smile, pressing the silver locket into her palm. "Keep this. Tell them Thomas Miller didn't die a monster." "No," Clara sobbed, gripping his arm. "We go together. Not where I'm going." He pulled away gently. Thomas Miller walked out into the blinding sunlight, unarmed. He didn't raise his hands in surrender. He raised them to the sky. For 3 years he had been the silent wolf, locking his trauma behind a wall of silence. Now he shattered that wall. He took a massive breath and screamed. It wasn't a war cry, but a roar of absolute release that echoed off the canyon walls. "I am Thomas Miller," he bellowed, his voice shaking the earth. "And I am free!" The raw power of the scream startled a rookie trooper. In a panic, the soldier fired. The shot struck Thomas in the chest. He sank to his knees, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Clara ran from the cave, ignoring the guns, and caught him as he fell. "Family," he whispered, his eyes clearing as the pain faded. "You are family." Thomas died in her arms, the savage mask gone, leaving only the man. Clara Duncannon returned to civilization, but she refused to let the world forget him. She wrote a book, The Silent Chief, clearing her uncle's name and revealing the tragic hero beneath the war paint. She never remarried. Instead, she lived out her days on a quiet ranch, often sitting on the porch at sunset, listening to the wind, where, legend says, you can still hear the triumphant scream of the man who finally found his voice. What a tragic, incredible journey. Thomas Miller, a man broken by war, found a new life only to lose it, and then found redemption in the arms of the niece he unknowingly saved. It's a powerful reminder that history isn't just about battles and dates. It's about people, families, and secrets that can change everything. Clara's courage ensured that Thomas didn't die a nameless savage, but a beloved uncle. If this story touched your heart or surprised you, please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you never miss a lost story from the Wild West. What do you think? Was Thomas a hero or a villain? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.